the thing with the US, I feel like this is the US in a lot of things, is like the temperature is just raised there. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like everything is,
Yeah.
I feel like America is almost the land of like, everything is just more
Yeah. I would agree.
polarized, and everything, there's just a bigger range of everything. I feel like in the UK, most people's opinions are sort of in this range, and in Australia and in Canada, they're in this
Yeah.
range, and then in the US, it's
Hmm.
in this range.
Hmm.
So like the conservatives in the US are like more conservative, like
Yeah.
much more conservative than they are in the UK. There aren't right wing there are no like right wing conservatives in the UK, trying to bring the Second Amendment over, or even on issues like being pro life, or the US is just like, it's just further on each side. It's like, I don't know. And then they've got like their whole sort of socialist wing of the Democratic Party, and
Yeah.
whereas in the UK, it's like it's just everything's a bit more moderated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
America's reactive as well. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that America is a very, very, very reactive country.
Mm.
It's something that, I mean, since I moved here, it's something that's become very obvious to me. It was a culture shock to begin with, because Aussies, and I dare say the Brits are a little bit different because the Brits internalize a lot of stuff. So if you say something to a Brit and they frown at you, that can mean any number of things. Any number of things. Whereas an Aussie would be more inclined to just be like, get away from me, and then
Mm.
walk away if they're displeased or whatever, or they smile at you, whatever. Aussies are much more expressive in that sense, but also much more laid back. Americans, and I love Yanks, I love living here. It's a great country. There's so many great people, but they're reactive. They're reactive to being offended. They're reactive to being happy. And it's something that actually it's an interesting thing, how excited Americans get at your successes. Something I've
Mm.
never, ever,
I
ever
love that.
experienced
I love
before.
that.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
love that
favorite thing about.
too.
That might be my favorite thing about America.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
I
just
like
like
that.
they're so supportive, and I
Yeah.
like, this is part of this reactiveness, is like, if you're doing well, they're behind you, they want
Mm.
you to do better, they're like pushing you up the hill, like you can do it.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I don't know about England, and you can, or the UK, you can certainly qualify this, but in Australia it's much less that, unless you're the underdog, then
Yeah.
they're cheering you on.
It's the exact same in the UK.
Yeah.
I feel like in the US, people celebrate success a lot more,
Yes.
right? I
Love
feel
it.
like, yeah, and you see it all the way through. You see it even in, look at how they, school sports and university sports, and it's
Mm.
everything's just huge and crazy. And they got the t-shirt cannons going, and everyone's
Yeah.
cheering, and they've got 20,000 people watching a college basketball or football game or whatever. Like,
Right.
no one's watching university level sport. That's not televised.
Anything
That's not,
in
yes, that's
Australia
not like
or
a big
Britain. Yeah.
thing. Yeah. And even in the world of
Yeah.
music, right? Like in the hip hop world in the US, if you think of it, like most big rappers were
Mhm.
brought through by another rapper, right? So it's like one rapper gets big and they put their arm down and they bring up another three, and then
Right.
they get big and then they bring up another three, and
Mhm.
that's kind of how it goes there. Whereas like
Yep.
in the UK, for example, it's more like, one person gets big and they don't want to really help anyone else get big because they're kind of worried that, oh, maybe they'll take their spot. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Whereas in the US, it's not like that. I mean, one Dr. Dre gets big and then he brings like, like, of course they had the whole NWA thing, but then he brings in Snoop, he brings in Eminem, he brings in this person, and then Eminem brings in 50 Cent, and Eminem brings in Obi Trice, and then 50 Cent brings in Lloyd Banks and June, and it's like a chain. It's like a
Mm.
chain, and you don't get that in lots of other places. I mean, in the US, you have artists who, like, they can just be big in their hometown, and just like off their hometown, they get so much love that they can, make a living just by being big in Dallas or being
Yeah.
big in
Yeah.
LA or whatever. Whereas I think in the UK, it's kind of like, okay, you got to kind of, you have to kind of take the whole country, you can't just, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but there's something kind of wired in the culture and in the
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. I mean, I know that Australians have what we call tall poppy syndrome, where
mm,
they constantly want to cut you down when you get too far ahead. And I don't want any Aussies to think that I'm hanging, like basically being abusive. I love Australia. I love Aussies. When I go home, I'm like, heck yeah, like they're just so happy. So I just
yeah,
want to qualify that. I love my home country. I really do. But there's just these things about it where, yeah, you really do kind of struggle to get ahead. And if you do get ahead, then you're sort of being pulled back a little bit. And I jokingly always say that Australia is a little bit of a prison sometimes for people who want to grind, which is something I just sincerely appreciate about America. But you're right in the sense that people, even in politics, I noticed that since I moved here, you know, people would help me. I'd be like, hey, and I don't like asking for help. I'm one of those people who really just wants to do it myself, just, you know, to get that sense of like personal achievement. But you know, a lot of people will be like, hey, sorry, you were trying to do this, like, can I help in any way? And look, there's a portion of them that'll never pull through, that's okay. But even in the political environment, and I will say this about people on the right, whether they be moderate or conservative, libertarian, whatever, they are so willing to just assist you because they just want you to get ahead.
Yeah.
And it's just such a, yeah, I mean, so I mean, obviously you've experienced it in the music world, but definitely on the political side of things too. It's, yeah, Americans are awesome like that. Yeah. They're really awesome like that.
Even on the political side of things. I mean, you know, when I went to the US, it was just, I was there for 9 weeks and it was just a love fest, right? I was just like, wow, you know, I was in all these cities I'd never been to before, and the amount of people who were just reaching out to me, or was just doing meetups for like through Twitter, and like 25 people just kind of show up, and I'm just like, wow, this is cool. And everyone's getting on with each other. And then, you know, got a fan who like works in the Pentagon and is like, oh, I see you're in DC. Do you want to tour the Pentagon? I'm like, okay, cool. I tweet out like, oh, can anyone get me into the White House? And then the next day I've got 2 invitations to the White House. And I'm just like, this is crazy. Like in the UK, like I'm not getting these opportunities, you know, whether in going on Joe Rogan podcast and Ben Shapiro and all these people, they're just reaching out to me and being like, hey man, like, yeah, I see you're in LA, like come do the show. And I'm like, cool, like, okay. And then, you know, Fox News, like Tucker Carlson's producer just emails me, hey Zuby, we see you around. Like, what? I'm like, man, in the UK, this doesn't happen to me.